Continuing with reading Failsafe, the Kennedy Curse, fused with science fiction fantasy. Written by me, Susan MeeLing, Reverend Susan MeeLing, Reverend MeeLing, Lady Dori, Belle, a few other names. It is now almost time to finalize the last portions of the explanation. But you must go to your friends now, Buckgun gestured to Maggie to hurry off down the dark path with one hand. Running down a hallway towards the last location she remembered, both Christopher and Luke still talking with one another. These shadows grew around her in all directions. Without any source of light to illuminate Maggie's surroundings, she walked carefully. Keeping her arms stretched outward to feel for anything, she unsuccessfully continued for what seemed to be an eternity until she found it. Smelling dirt and rotting compost along the way, she was unable to sense anything more. Suddenly, a blinding light engulfed every bit of her senses, embracing Maggie completely. Walking along the trails left from a plume of smoke, she followed the long and soft pathway. Gigantic beings surrounding the trails moved slowly. Some remained in place as Maggie walked along. Unable to differentiate one being from another, she enjoyed serene views and breezy wanderings. While she enjoyed the sights, Maggie noticed an oddity. Within each step she took along the path, a poof of perfumed smoke jolted in a small explosion, spritzing a scent. Adding to the beauty of the bright colors enchanted her senses when abruptly the path led downward directly into a counterclockwise spinning whirlpool. The lava within the center of the volcano devoured Maggie as she swam with ease. Able to hear the sizzling with the ability to sense the lingering scent of smoke, Maggie flipped through the volcanic lava with glee. Going deeper within the fuming molten, she giggled, seeing bubbles pop up all around her. Just when she thought the heat was getting too warm to handle, she burst through the redness into a darkened, cool blue. Sensing the warmth gone from her surroundings, Maggie felt the brisk coldness all around her, filling her being with a jolt of awakening energy. She swam as quickly as she could towards the surface, tasting the saltiness of the ocean while Maggie flied out from the dead sea covered by dark chunks of dried salt, landing on a tropical island. Pushing herself off of the sand to stand up and feel the warm sun mix with the cool breeze along the ocean side, Maggie's soul met instant peace on earth. Enjoying the scent of salt water while adoring the pleasing views in all directions, Maggie found a fire pit. Hearing the crackling and popping from the live fire caused her to appreciate the sunset or sunrise all the more. Observing a large quantity of prepared food and liquid drinks, she searched for an offering of thanks. Walking closer to the rainforest plant life, she searched for the ideal sensation upon her scavenging. Once she felt the energy surge, Maggie internally knew the ideal choice. First, bowing to the ground to lean towards one plant, she reached to pull one leaf forward. Gently pressing her lips to the foliage in appreciation, she plucked a single blossom. Bowing one final time out of respect and slowly returning to the food, Maggie placed the flower on the table. Taking a moment of silence and gratitude, she searched for anyone in sight. Shrugging her shoulders to gradually reach for a slab of meat, she devoured all her stomach could handle. Quickly cleaning her plate of food, Maggie returned to the same plant for similar procedures prior to fixing herself in a second flatware serving. With another moment of silent appreciation prior to eating, Maggie enjoyed every single delectable morsel tasted, nourishing every pore of her being while strengthening each beat of her heart and transforming her mind. Maggie's soul felt the necessary upcoming choices. Just as she was about to release a joy-filled sigh, a group of natives yelled in her direction, shooting arrows and throwing spears while screaming as they ran to attack Maggie. She ran off unaware when the group stopped running. Upon reaching the table, the aggressive savages encircled the table to stare at the floral offering, enchanted and enamored, allowing Maggie to escape and run through the foliage into the caverns for safety. She found herself running closer to the males talking. Running towards Christopher and Luke, she yelled, "Luke, you need to meet someone!" Out of breath and in a panic, Maggie exclaimed, "Christopher, look who's here!" Without Buckle in sight when she turned around, she fell to the floor from exhaustion. Both Christopher and Luke attempted to wake her, but without any luck on their side. The two carefully lifted her small frame to gently place her body onto a chaise lounge, created within the time frame of the Queen Anne era. While the males whispered among themselves, trying to figure out what happened to Maggie and assess the problem at hand, Maggie remained lifeless. Barely able to notice her chest move from inhaling and exhaling, Christopher increasingly worried about Maggie's safety. Wondering if the group searching for her were able to penetrate through her psyche, he knew something else was wrong. Without a warning, a presence overcame his senses, and he knew her intuition was correct, feeling Balkung's energy. Noticing Luke standing at Maggie's feet when he stood near her head, Christopher mumbled under his breath, "We are the two lampposts to guide her way, as well as the witnesses of many for Maggie, I am assuming." Sitting upright abruptly and looking towards Christopher, Maggie asked, "Would you please describe to me in a few descriptions as possible?" Unsure of the problem or what was happening, he slowly responded, "You have overcome more than most others would remain saintly in comparison." Luke interjected in competition, "You fled the wilderness to escape with the same dragon beast sent to kill you, to somehow befriend him." Christopher nervously joked to try to ease the tension emanating throughout Maggie while remaining in the running lead. "Too bad you are not a male, because you could have been my king and be worshipped by your right-hand man instead of only being another's conscience all these years." Luke exclaimed, I was looking to make her my wife one day. Thanks for ruining my plans, jerk off, with that statement." Christopher chuckled. "Yep, I have been known to do that many times over," while encouraging Maggie to ignore Luke as he continued saying, "Males tend to jerk off while females tend to..." Christopher looked towards Maggie with confusion. "What is it you females do exactly anyway?" Shaking his hands in the air. "Never mind, I do not need to know." Maggie rolled her eyes. How sad a gay male is afraid to talk about the female enjoyment, however, just as equally as a straight male in other references. Returning the conversation to her inquiring points, Maggie asked, "What is your opinion of a false religion versus a religion with dual balanced views instead of singularity?" Igniting a firestorm of commentary from the males, she additionally inquired, "With such strong opinions, what is your opinion of the claim of all humans becoming immortal with the Zoroastrian beliefs? And what are your thoughts about the arrival of a Maitreya?" Christopher joked to ease the tension. "Well, Aren't you a little dragon-headed beast sent from Satan with 7 heads full of queries with 10 billion questions in each today, aren't you? Luke attempted to jest along. I think you can move as stealth as a leopard, or as temperamental as a bear, when provoked, and as pronounced as a lioness in front of and leading 9 other lions. The 2 males looked at one another, filled with confusion, and simultaneously asked Maggie, Are you feeling okay, or is something wrong? Maggie's eyes rolled backwards as she fell to the ground. Mott repeated her earlier declaration one final time. This is a moment on energies of this galaxy and universe. Heed my words and my intentions. Christopher and Luke stared at her body, remained still on the lounge chair, confused beyond words, remaining silent while overlooking her intently to keep Maggie safe or get anything she might need. The 2 knelt on one knee, remaining at the foot and at the head of her frame, while their minds wandered with fear. A sudden serenity flowed throughout their beings. The oblong triangular formation sent energetic waves into the atmosphere to fill the Earth and galaxy with a beaming illumination as the 3 remained quiet. Shortly after the light sent a final ray of incandescence, a calm filled all portions of the Milky Way. Similar to entering the eye of a hurricane storm, paused before Mott stated proudly before everyone in the same area. Here we meet to finalize, as all witness, the transactions and the final choices. Without warning, the lingering souls throughout the globe united as one above the outstretched hands, transporting all into the same location. The last living plant on the Earth's surface ignited upon the waters, touching the leaf of a green wormwood plant. The second the poisoned fluid reached a single leaf of the foliage, the roots released all dirt, clutching the gravity of Earth. Shooting upward towards the skies and soaring beyond, it was lost amongst the stars. All of the explosives beneath the layers and in between the crusts of the Earth's shifting tectonic plates detonated at the same second. Within the blink of an eye, all 3 were sitting within the area on the center of a stage, surrounded by the masses. Shocked by the view of all captives, from the top 1% within their binds, unable to do anything to save themselves, let alone anyone else. Within the speakers around their ears, the captives listened to the voice whisper the many events in which they specifically, as in the cherubim ones, could have chosen the morally correct option, filling their individual boxes with their urine and fecal matter up to their necks, all choked and gagged from the pungent scent, and textures covering their bodies. All were grateful because they were unable to smell or feel anything covering or filling the areas surrounding anyone watching. Maggie jumped up and suddenly startled Christopher and Luke when she flew towards the wall of water, repeatedly screaming, Dionysus! Dionysus! Christopher put his palm over his face while Luke screamed her name, trying to run after her. Just as Maggie was going to dive through the wall to play with her pet anglerfish, Lucifer jumped toward to guard the entrance, shaking one finger side to side, informing Maggie it was unsafe to enter the waters of the globe at that moment. She shrugged her shoulders. Wrapping her arms around his muscular, hairy waist, she looked up and gazed into his glowing red eyes, creating a slight grin to form as he watched her scamper towards Kali for a hug. The Grim Reaper wrapped the arms around Maggie, lifting her upward while swirling round and round in circles as the 2 flew above the crowds. Maggie's attention was drawn to the glimmer of the blade of the sickle. Luke ran towards Maggie and grasped just a bit too late, watching the reaper's arms flow through the tattered cloak. Smiling as she leaned into the adoring arms, she kissed the skeletal cheek. Floating towards the floor, Lakshmi reached out to catch Maggie alongside of Kuan Yin, looking up into their eyes with a joyful grin while they assisted Maggie to her feet. Luke wrapped his arms around her body, pulling her close while glaring towards Christopher, who shrugged his shoulders. Moving towards several beings to speak with them, Luke looked on with confusion. Maggie pulled away after giving him a slight peck on his cheek, oblivious to the crowds. When Luke attempted to point to the horrifying sights in front of the people, she ignored his commentary. The group of beings gathered around her, whispering amongst themselves. Luke ceaselessly attempted to join the conversation, even though he saw Christopher remaining to the side. Kali Ma maneuvered herself in front of his path, stopping his movement instantly, looking over her head to see thousands of arms with weaponry in forms he had never seen. Luke wet himself. She bent at the waist to lower her eyes to his, causing him to let the diarrhea flow onto the floor. Christopher's eyes widened in fear for the first time in decades, never seeing such fury and rage emanate and illuminate Kali's fury in such a manner before. He too started losing control over his bladder. Throughout her tirade, yelling into Luke's face of the disgrace before her of the cherubim, Kali Ma's skin began releasing visible steam. Lucifer meandered in between the two, asking Luke, "Is it more compassionate to kill through thousands of stabbings, or is it more humane to end things with one swift move?" One individual from the group huddling together asked Luke, "As a heterosexual male, Luke, what would you do in this position?" Searching the crowds for an answer while he yelped, "Let us all go free and let us be." Ganesh raised his trunk to release a screech before Set moved closer to Luke, inquiring, "Do you truly believe all of humanity deserves another chance? Or do you believe only the compassionate, honorable, and righteous ones do?" Nodding his head up and down rapidly, Luke attempted to exclaim, "I will never do anything wrong ever again if you let me live." Feverishly looking around his immediate area, he exclaimed, "Maybe if you allow all of us to survive whatever this hallucination is occurring right now, we will learn to be perfect." Yelling while raising all weaponed arms above her head to swiftly strike Luke at the same moment with all armaments in each hand, "You cherubim failed!" Christopher looked into Luke's shredded remains, filled with shock and horror, wiping Luke's blood out from his eyes. Christopher looked at his hands with worry, having been certain of specific details for decades to abruptly lose the illusion. He searched for answers from anyone. Out of the shadows, a hunched, cloaked figure maneuvered into visibility for him to watch Caradwin inch closer towards the center of the group, gradually moving beyond the rest of the individuals, making her way closer to Christopher as his eyes were locked onto hers, freezing in place. Without a concern for his safety as he placed one hand on his popped-out hip, Christopher awaited her arrival, staring at them crossly while moving closer to the young man. Caradwin's anger increased with each footstep, though petrified, refused to release the bride. And that's another reading from Failsafe, The Kennedy Curse Fused with Science Fiction Fantasy, written by me, Susan MeeLing, Reverend Susan MeeLing, Reverend MeeLing, Lady Dori, Belle, a few other names. You can go to my website, www.susanmeeling.com, and you'll be able to purchase all of my books online if you click on the pictures of the books. I like this one, which will lead you to a link to purchase my books. There are plenty of things for you to look at to see what I have done on my website, as well as my journal blog online, The Ornery PSA. Thanks for tuning in.